What's up, guys? Welcome back. So, I had a very well received video I made on how to get better at martial arts striking, and most of you that subscribe to me probably like the videos that I post where I get very deep into the striking topics such as kickboxing, boxing, Muay Thai. But I always say that I can bring the most value of my experience of training in the martial arts for 15 years in the form of these speaking videos where I can go over different topics and basically give you information that took me so many years to accumulate, right? So last time I went right off the rip, but this time we do have a list. So the video topic for today is going to be things that nobody tells you when you get into the martial arts. So I'll tell you them now. Okay, so first of all, most of the journey is failing up. Now, what I mean by that is a lot of times we're always going to be training looking for wins. And you will have literal wins and you will have moral victories. But you need to understand that a lot of the time, as long as your level is increasing relative to your competition or the people around you over the span of your training career, you could say, whether you're just a martial artist or an actual fighter, as long as that's taking place, that progression, you're basically winning. Okay, so even if you are failing, if your competition gets better, if the room of people you're training with is getting better despite your win rate always remaining the same, you're essentially failing up. Okay, and failing up is a little bit different from moral victory, because moral victory is when you don't necessarily win in a one-on-one competition or a team sport, but you achieve some kind of a sub goal that contributes to your overall becoming of yourself. Whereas failing up is the idea that you can actually fail and have losses but be getting better ultimately. I notice a lot of the times when I was training in martial arts, when I first started in karate, I would train with people that were very casual, that wanted to train karate. Then I got into boxing and I would actually be training boxing rounds in 16-ounce gloves with headgear with people that were non-boxers. And eventually it led into people that were actual boxers. And then eventually people that were open class boxers, despite me not having a USA boxing match in my life. I was training and fighting in Muay Thai, but I would train boxing as part of my Muay Thai training. And I noticed that the level of people that I was sparring with got better, and to the point where I was sparring with some professional boxers with double-digit records. Now, while I was in no way, shape, or form beating them in these sparring sessions, right? There's no winning or losing, but I'm just saying, like, the pecking order in the room is usually made apparent by how well you do. I was able to land my jab, I was able to land right hands, and it's crazy to think that you can essentially lose the same amount in sparring over years, but actually be getting better. Okay, so you're failing up. That's what failing up is. The next thing no one tells you is that fighting hurts, right? So here's the thing. You have many different martial arts, ones that pertain to grappling and ones that pertain to striking. Now, a lot of you grapplers, it can be very painful getting put in a choke, into a hold, into an arm bar, leg locks, right? The thing is, though, a lot of times, like, with leg locks, you tap to the position because you don't want to, there's not as much like bendability in the legs, right? You tap to the position. He puts you in a heel hook, you tap. With the arm bars, we all know that grapple and have done jujitsu. You're not actually tapping to the pain. You're tapping to the fact that your arm is being hyperextended. You tap and you let go. Of course, it hurts if they hyperextend or break some shit. But I'm just saying, like, grappling can hurt to an extent. It can hurt to have a guy on top of you in side control. Knee on belly is like the one thing everyone on their first day is like, how is this even allowed? This is crazy, right? It hurts to clinch, especially if you do Muay Thai clinching barehanded. It hurts getting, like, a guy's face in your jaw and pushing and pulling and jacking up the neck. Except people need to understand that if you've never done a striking martial art, you don't really understand, like, the pain is different. It's not like a sore pain or a like large pain. It's a more sharp pain, right? So when you get leg kicked, like, that is like the great equalizer of men, dude. It's like when you get leg kicked, you can be a really tough person with a high pain tolerance, get leg kicked, and even though you can mentally take the pain, your body, like, hyperventilates because it's such a fucking shock. It's kind of similar to, like, a tough, rugged carpenter that, like, can cut his finger off and, like, not even care and drive himself to the hospital. But that same guy sticks his finger in an outlet and he's just like, what the fuck? Where an electrician might be able to, like, you know, lick their finger and touch 120 volts, 220 volts and not even care, right? It's like different pains. And the reason I say no one tells you this is because I think a lot of people, when they get into striking, they don't actually consider or understand how bad it hurts. They think like, oh, when you fight, you get an adrenaline rush and you don't feel anything. It's like, yes, you do. People wouldn't, you know, go down to leg kicks in fights if adrenaline really did that for you. And also when it comes to like the liver punch, it's like you can have a good chin. You can be really good at like staying on your feet, eating big shots to the chin. Like personally, I've never been knocked out cold getting hit in the chin, and I've only been dropped in the sense of knocked off my balance. I've never been like dropped like a flash knockdown. But like, dude, I've been TKO'd in the gym by liver kicks and liver punches like 5 occasions. It's like, there's no tough guys. Like there's more nerves in the liver than in the balls. So it's like, you think it, like if a grown man kicked you in the balls, you'd be on the ground, right? Well, if a grown man kicks you or punches you in the liver with like a small surface area, like a piece of the boxing glove or their foot, yeah, like you're gonna go down, right? There's no tough guys when it comes to certain moves in fighting. Okay, so fighting hurts. If you're a grappler and you've never done striking, like, I'm just saying, maybe you're the toughest guy ever, but you also just literally might not be as tough as you think you are just because you're a grappler. Okay, moving on. How you allocate your time shapes you. This is a good one I thought of. So, you know, a lot of times, like, you think about like a certain type of almost like a role-playing game, right? Like RPG video games. The more time you put into them a lot of the time, the more you get out of it. And there's like an infinite level cap. You just keep training. But real life isn't like that. Real life, it's like you have a certain amount of energy. You have a certain amount of time that you can give to training. And the way you allocate that time and that breakdown really does shape what kind of fighter you become, right? Because we all know that there's different martial arts, but there's different subcategories even within martial arts. Like when it comes to grappling, you can be very isometric. You can be a top player. You can be someone that wants to be well-rounded, but you're not that explosive, you're not that fast or gifted. You can be a guy that's very scrambly and you actually don't like a very like fixed and controlled grappling scenario. You kind of like using chaos to your advantage. You kind of like the arm drags and jumping behind people's backs and like kind of going for submission over position just to create scrambles. With striking, it's the same way. You can be a guy that wants to get in the pocket and sort of like impose yourself on somebody, but you can also be someone like Sean O'Malley where you like to be in a certain distance and you like to snipe people, right? You don't want like you compared to someone like Ilia Topuria, where like Ilia Topuria is a puncher, but he actually, and he's aggressive, but he actually uses the chaos to break his opponent, where he thrives in the chaos, right? You know, a lot of fighters like Canelo are like that with that. They're very good at that 50-50 position. And that's the thing. It's like, however you allocate your time is going to shape the type of fighter you become. And maybe this isn't so important when you're new, but no one ever tells you this. Like, no one ever tells you, like, okay, once you become, if you're not an adult now, you're like a kid, or you're just like in your younger 20s. Like me, I'm 30, right? Like once you become a full adult and you have a full-time job, you have responsibilities, maybe kids, stuff like that, whatever life brings your way, you're going to kind of find how much time you actually have and energy. And that's when you really got to begin to allocate, like, okay, what's important and what like kind of doesn't fucking matter. And you're going to have people tell you, you have to do this, you have to do this. But at the end of the day, it's like, you can't realistically do all those things. Like one reason I stopped listening to Joe Rogan Experience is because although I like his show, it always kind of pisses me off that every expert comes in and they're like, oh, like you have to be doing cold plunges, or oh, like every man should be hunting. It's like really good for your mental. And the problem is it's like, there's a lot of things you could do. You could do rest and recovery. You could do cold plunge. You could do steady state cardio in the form of running. You can do airdyne bike. But it's like, you can't do all these things realistically. You don't have the time. And even if you did have the time, and this is where people get it twisted, even if you did have the time, that means you could just put more or less time into each in particular category. So life is a role-playing game, and it's even more so in the martial arts. Whether you're just a boxer or an MMA fighter or just a Muay Thai fighter or just a grappler, within your own martial art, you're going to mold your character essentially based on how you're allocating your time, okay? And a lot of times there's not just a coach that, unless you're paying for personal training, that's gonna do this for you. So you kind of got to use your own judgment a little bit. All right, moving on. Boredom and entertainment in martial arts and how it pertains to how good you get. Now, here's the thing, right? a lot of time people talk about the concept of sacrifices, and it makes sense because it's like, you have to understand, if you decide to embark on a martial arts journey, or you've already been doing martial arts and you want to expand your training, you need to understand that, like, going from one commitment to another commitment, if you live your life a certain way, we all have routines, there's probably a way that you're spending 24 hours that is already set in stone and you're very used to it. And then when you start to add more time training, it's not just the fact that you're doing more physically and burning more calories and spending more time training, but it's the fact that you are removing some aspect of your life that brings comfort and stability. And your body and mind is going to have to deal with those two things at the same time, because we can't just simply add hours to our day to train. We have to unwillingly or willingly remove other things that we were already doing, right? And you got to understand that, like, it's hard to do that when you already have a very fun life. You have a very fulfilling life. You know, a lot of the best fighters come from poverty, but if I'm just being honest, it's the fucking boredom, okay? Like, when I, you know, like, for example, people go on vacation, right? They do fun things. They would never even think about training. With me, I'm always like bouncing between family, work, overtime, training. So when I go with my wife down in Mexico and we have all this downtime, it brings me to a place where I get very retrospective and I train a lot, do a lot of shadow boxing. I do a lot of methods I wouldn't normally do. I train my nephews. I turn trainer with the mitts. I start thinking about, you know, strategies that would be good for them that aren't necessarily good for me because we have different body types. And I noticed that in the absence of all this stimulation in the form of work and shit like that in my fucking bedroom, I'm able to expand my mind as a martial artist and do so much more, use so many more brain cells toward martial arts than I do normally. And I have a pretty boring life. Most people would think that my life is particularly boring, okay? There's a lot of people out there where it's like, I understand why the kid that lives in an impoverished part of the country or the world sees the fun in training Muay Thai or boxing, where someone that is very, like, they have it all, it would be very hard for them to, like, leave that. And that's why Jake Paul is so impressive, because it's like, you know, like, say what you want, but this fucking kid, like, he doesn't need to be in there. And it's like, there's actually an all access video of Jake Paul when he was training with, who the hell is that guy again? The guy that dropped Mayweather. I'm drawing a blank right now. The first guy he trained with when he fought that other YouTuber kid, but whatever. Basically, Jake Paul, he goes, I could be spending my money, hanging out with friends, doing things that are fun, but I'm here fucking bear crawling on a mountain with gloves on. And it's so funny because even before Jake Paul became, like, decent at boxing, like, I'm not gonna lie, like, that shit really stuck with me. I'm like, yo, this kid's locked in and nobody's giving him fucking credit. And it's kind of funny that he did go on to be, like, a half decent boxer and beat some decent people, you know what I mean? But back to my point, what I'm trying to say is, everyone always says make sacrifices, but nobody considers the fact that, like, yeah, it's gonna be hard to actually make sacrifices when your life is fucking nice, okay? And then there's, like, that saying from Marvin Hagler, you know, it's hard to wake up at 4 a.m. and run when you're in silk sheets. Well, like, even if we're not all in silk sheets, we have our micro versions of that. We have Netflix time with the girlfriend. We have hanging out with our friends, okay? So, like, you know what? If you're in college, you like hanging out with friends, keep doing that. Like, it's fun. If you like hanging out with friends, you're in your 20s, keep doing that. But it's like, dude, like, do you need to be going brunch on Saturday, golfing, like, fucking shit like that? Like, if you're a young and able body and want to pursue martial arts, I mean, aside from the things we can't avoid, like keeping friendships and keeping relationships with family and things that are healthy, really a lot of your fucking brain cells should go to the martial arts, right? Like with me, I have work, I have my wife, I have family and some close friends that I have a small circle. And then it's watching fights, training martial arts, training people, making YouTube videos about this shit, okay? Like, it's Saturday night, I'm talking to you guys, I'm bringing you that fucking whatever wisdom, you know what I'm saying? So that's just something to keep in mind. Like, if your life is really fun, it's going to be hard for you and you have to make sacrifices, but sometimes it's easier to, like, you don't have to make sacrifices if you can, like, live a little bit of a boring life, guys. You don't, like, life doesn't need to be that fucking fun, okay? Like, let's move on. All right, so my yellow belt story, this kind of piggybacks off of my last point of something people don't tell you. So my martial arts history was like, I never got in a street fight until the point I was like 15, 16, and I did these boxing matches in the park where we'd fuck each other up street beef style with no mouthpiece and shitty Modell's boxing gloves. And we had, like, I live in New York, we had like all the Dominicans out, like we had like 100 people. Like, I had street beef style fights before that was a thing. I didn't know that we were doing this shit for free and we could have monetized, made money. We had the whole neighborhood, the cops would be watching, they didn't give a fuck. You had people bringing their kids, like my kid, I want to put him in here because like he's been a bad kid, like kick his fucking ass. Like, I was like the little white boy, you know what I'm saying? It was awesome. So I did like 7 of those. And then we brought it to the basement in the winter to my place. And we did like 7 or 8 times. So I had a lot of experience getting hit and shit with no fucking mouthpiece, which was stupid. And these cardboard ass boxing gloves, little 12-ounce ones from Modell's. But then I moved into high school wrestling and I did wrestling. And I did really bad. Like, I was just not aggressive and didn't understand it. And I actually went like 0-11 my first year. And then I actually got good at wrestling later on in life through actually MMA training with undefeated MMA fighters, which helped me a lot, but that's for another time. So, like, I'm a much better MMA grappler than I am a pure wrestler. I'm not a good pure wrestler. I'm more of a Muay Thai fighter that can clinch, and I can shoot box decent in the context of MMA. But anyway, moving on. So I was shit at wrestling, but I was a decent, like, street boxer. And then I got into karate, and I kind of knew, like, dude, I know in a street fight you could probably beat up half the people in here because you can wrestle and box, but like, dude, I knew I had a lock in. I had a great sensei. He was trained by the Okinawans. His, my sensei, Ruben Ruiz, his sensei, Reno Morales, was trained by the Okinawans, or guys that were trained with the Okinawans. Like, this was true lineage, and I knew that the art was just as important as the physicality. So when I went to get my yellow belt, it was big for me because I was like, you know what, like, I know people make fun of karate, that it's not like jujitsu, but man, the shit they made me do for that yellow belt was more than you fucking blue belts in jujitsu. I had to like fight adults, fucking bare knuckle with the windows blacked out and shit, and like eat body shots and leg kicks with no pads. You guys over here rolling around and shit. But anyway, no, so the thing with this yellow belt was I was in the height of like the fun part of high school. I was 16, I was a sophomore. My friend was having a party, and like there were all these friends that were gonna go, like the boys and girls, and I was so excited for it. And when I found out my yellow belt test was gonna be that day, I had to make a decision. I was like, man. And the way it worked was me and my family, we'd go upstate to Fishkill, New York every weekend, and that's where I trained karate. And he was kind of letting me move through the progression system of karate, only really going Friday, Saturday, and sometimes Sunday. So I knew, like, all right, like I can't miss this opportunity because this guy's doing me a favor by, everyone else is going 6 days a week. I'm going like 2 days a week, and he's about to promote me after like 3 months of doing this, right? I can't like say no. So I did the yellow belt test, and I remember doing this yellow belt test where I did my little forms, sparred some kid. He was like a purple belt or whatever it was. I kind of kicked his ass, got my flowers, and I got the yellow belt. And I remember going home that night and being like, dude, sometimes like when you're 16, you're also 15, 14, 13, and every other year before that. And I remember feeling like a 10-year-old little bitch. Like, I don't even give a fuck about this yellow belt, man. I just missed a fun night. Everybody put up photos on MySpace and Facebook, and like I just felt so left out, and I got FOMO for the next 3 days. But I never really thought about it that aside from high school wrestling and boxing in the park, if I hadn't done that yellow belt test, I don't think I'd be here today. I don't think I would have went on to become a martial artist and a Muay Thai fighter. It's almost like every step of the way matters. And the reason I'm telling you about this yellow belt story is because it's like I said, if I had no life and I was just a kid with no friends, it would have been easy to just go do that. But I had to really say, wow, like, high school bonfire party at my friend's house. And you gotta remember too, for context, I'm 16 years old going to a karate class to get a yellow belt. I've already wrestled in high school. I've already boxed in the park with people like talking all night. Yo, you fucked that dude up. Like, I've already had those cool experiences, and I'm over here in this little dojo in small town America, like, hiya, 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 all right? You know what I'm saying? But I knew that in the grand scheme of things, it was extremely important, okay? And that's the message to take away. Moving on. All right, to get a new skill, you have to remove a skill. So very similarly to how I was saying that the way you allocate your time is going to shape the you of the future, the way you train your skills is also going to mold the you of the now. You see, understand that, like, although you can pack on knowledge and information, there's a lot of times where you can only be a certain type of fighter at any given time, right? And I remember, I forgot the interview, but I remember Paddy Pimblett in the UFC, Paddy the Baddy, he actually talked about the same thing in a different use of words. And it's like, you're gonna forget most of what you learn in martial arts, but it's not always about like how much you know. It's about like in any particular time, what your best moves are and how you actually play into your strengths while also using everything else you've learned along the way as like mixed utility, right? So it's like, for me, I know Muay Thai to an extent, right? Like I'm not a pro Muay Thai fighter, but I fought Muay Thai in the ring. I've done Muay Thai. Like I think I have the stamp of approval that I like know Muay Thai. And I never got my black belt in Shotokan or Kyokushin, but it's like, I know that my kickboxing style is my best style. I believe in my heart that amongst everyone that's ever kickboxed or trained kickboxing, I have like a skill set that took 15 years to achieve, which you guys on my YouTube channel, you can tell me if you think I suck, or a lot of you guys most of the time say I look decent, right? So the thing is I understand that, or I understood that at the time, to get those skills, I had to take the preconceived notions of how I learned other things and remove them. I had to take the motor patterns and the muscle memory I had and remove it in order to gain the new skills. So what I'm trying to get at is, it's hard to just add skills. You have to consciously realize that, hey, if I'm, let's say, throwing a rear roundhouse kick and I don't get up on the ball of my foot, it's not always as simple as get up on the ball of your foot. There's something in your motor patterns that are keeping you from doing that. You've been kicking shitty for 10,000 reps. So if you want to kick good for 10,000 reps, you actually have to understand, like, you're forgetting the past. You're removing those 10,000 reps of the shitty technique in order to make room for the new technique. And I noticed that a lot of guys that are even pro fighters, they get very stagnant because they cannot fucking do this. And when they get to train with higher level people that have trained in the UFC and stuff like that, this guy maybe is a, UFC vet or a champion, and he's showing you, let's say, his approach to setting up a single leg takedown and finish, or a double leg takedown. Understand that, like, whatever you think you know, he may just objectively know it better. So stop trying to pack on what he's teaching you with what you know. Just understand that you're moving on from that old shit, and that even though it's good and everything along the way is a great lesson, you literally do have to remove old preconceived notions to get better. And that's why me, just the level I happen to be at, right? I'm not claiming to know it all, but a lot of times when I train people, it's like, I'm not going to try to change you or change what I think works for you already, but understand, I can't just stack on top of what you think you know. I have to fundamentally change some of the things you know, and I do it to myself all the time. I call it recycling myself, and it's the way that I've always been able to get better from starting out as a not very imposing guy to being a pretty decent striker, because I understand that, like, I have to recycle my skill set. I can't just think I can add things all the time. Okay, moving on. The woman you pick in your life. Ooh, now this one, I'll say the woman, but really it's your partner, right? So this, what I'm about to say, goes for, heterosexual couples, whether it's your wife or husband, and even, homosexual couples or anything in between, husband, wife. Understand that, like, your partner in life, a lot of the time, because people are very different, what you find important, they're not going to find important. And there's some couples that train together. But what you got to understand is, a lot of the time, if you are very into training, just by law of averages or probability, whatever you want to call it, your partner is probably not going to be as into it as you are, okay? Maybe there's a type of training they're into. Like for me, I'm very into the martial arts, and I use, calisthenics, weightlifting as like a subcategory of my training, where my wife, she was into martial arts and is into martial arts, but she's more of a weightlifter, okay? So it really helps a lot that she's backing me all the time to train. She's always telling me, let's train. We go to the park. She's into her roller skating as like a sub hobby of fitness. I take the time to do my jump rope. If I were to join a gym, she joins with me. She gets the boxing gloves on. She trains with me. She holds mitts for me, She watches my videos, gives me feedback, tells me what I could do to make it better. Like, she's on the mission with me, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not trying to give relationship advice in this one, but it's like, understand that from the beginning, like, I mean, I guess if you've already been with someone and then decide to become a martial artist, it doesn't apply. But if you're already a martial artist and you develop a partner in life, you need to understand that like that person can make or break you starting from the moment you get together. Because it's like, how can you allocate time of training when this person is trying to take you away from it? How can you fail up when every time you fail, this person's trying to use your failures as validation of why you need to stop? You know what I'm trying to say? It's like, you can't have that in your life. So very similar when they say financially, the biggest decision you ever make is your spouse. It's kind of the same thing. Not like the most important thing, but one of the most important things with martial arts. Like people will talk about gym, they'll talk about coach or location or something, or which promotion you pick to become a professional in. Nobody talks about the partner. I mean, all crazy shit aside, Conor McGregor, and you know, whatever his humble beginnings was of being on welfare, I don't know. I'm not gonna get into that because I don't really give a shit. I know Conor McGregor is controversial, but him and his wife, dude, it's like such like a textbook definition of like, she really like believed in this dude. Like whenever they'd show videos of him training, like just doing all his crazy Conor shit, she would always like be there, just like chilling in a pair of jeans and like sneakers and like hanging out with Coach Kavanaugh and him. And she'd always be in like those videos where he'd be like showing his house. You could really tell she was like a ride or die, you know? Versus, let's say, you know, I don't want to get into drama, but like Ilya Taporia, where like he's got this chick that he's married to, and it's like they put on this like illusion of a power couple, but then like something happened recently and this guy's like, oh, you know, the ones that were trying to like, you know, the ones that were with me didn't want to see me at the top, whatever. I'm just using examples here, right? Two parallels. It's like it sounds so cliche, but in Rocky, like, and especially Rocky 1, because Rocky became an action series, but really Rocky 1 was kind of about Adrian and Rocky's dynamic and how like they're just two socially awkward individuals that boost each other, right? Like Rocky gets Adrian to go out of her shell, and she gets Rocky to take the fight against Apollo when he kind of was a little shaky and didn't want to do it. Okay, so like Rocky, good movie. Okay, like I said, the main point is the woman you pick will be a very big contributor to how good you get at martial arts. And nobody ever really tells you that because they're teaching you martial arts. They're not like, hey man, stop doing that jab, cross, left hook. Got to talk about, you know, women for a minute. No, it doesn't really work that way, okay? So moving on. Respect other standards. Okay, this one is kind of good. I'll try to make this one as quick as possible. This video is getting a little long. So respect the dojo and the gym, but sometimes question merit system and standards, and I'll explain to you what I mean. So like, I've noticed that amongst the many martial arts mentors I've had, really my sole mentor, John Karp, who was my boxing mentor, was the only one that ever really boosted my confidence. Now, the thing is with confidence is you need to cultivate it yourself. Your confidence comes from, you know, knowing that like you are who you say you are, or your skills can hold up to an occasion, very similar to the idea of like, you know, the sun's going to come up tomorrow. So a lot of times when you know how good you are, that gives you confidence. But I noticed that he always had a good balance of being real with me and boosting me, where I noticed there's a lot of people that like in many scenarios, they'll value a certain aspect of training where if you don't fit that mold, they'll try to keep you in the minor leagues. So maybe like you don't get to like their specific 6 p.m., let's say Muay Thai class all the time, so they act like you fucking suck. Or you don't have a certain skill set they have, or you don't use their style. They're trying to like, you know, you're an outside fighter. They want you to be an inside fighter. You're not listening to them. Oh, you fucking suck. When meanwhile, it's like, dude, boxing, ring, the chamber of truth, whether it's kickboxing, Muay Thai, or boxing, like training's important. But when you spar, like low key, that's all that fucking matters. If you can go to fucking Golden Gloves unattached with no gym and beat the shit out of everybody, you're a good boxer, right? Showing up to a specific time slot doesn't make you a good fighter. Learning a specific style doesn't mean you're a good or a bad fighter. Wearing a certain fucking outfit, and like the thing is the reason that I get like passionate about this because I've seen it too many times. I've seen like, you know, one guy, he's tough, he's a street fighter, he's like a fucking perfect example of, you know, of like a natural talent, and you got this guy, no, we got to bring him down, he's got too much energy. It's like, yo man, like Most people that go through a gym, they don't even want to compete. Here you have a guy that's naturally gifted and tough. It's like you're trying to like, you know, like fucking civilize him, like just because maybe he's not like as zen as you are. Like, why can't a teacher have a very zen personality and a student have a very rambunctious personality, or vice versa? You don't have to be in the same wavelength, and you don't have to force people to be like you. So understand that you can be very gifted and you can be very hardworking and you can be very precise, but sometimes there'll be some coaches or mentors that if you don't fit what they prioritize, they will just act like you suck, and you will start to believe that you suck until you go somewhere else, realize they value different areas of training, and all of a sudden you realize how good you actually are, okay? And it takes a while to, like, you have to be accountable for yourself. You can't just be like lazy, like, oh, this coach is hating on me because I don't fucking show up every day and I show up late. But I'm just saying, there is some times where coaches will like leverage favoritism and like mess with someone's confidence in order to keep them down here because there's something that they just don't like about them. And I think that's stupid, okay? So respect the dojo, respect the sensei, the coach, but hold yourself to a certain standard. Don't let people's bizarre quirks affect how you think of yourself. That might apply to some of you. Hopefully you've never had to deal with that. And the last one, the importance of wrestling in martial arts. So I'm not going to approach this from the standpoint of like wrestling versus striking. I just want to say that for you younger guys, for you older guys, you're cooked. No, I'm kidding. So understand that wrestling is so important to do in your life if you want to be a good fighter, not because of its effectiveness, not because of the moves, but because high school wrestling or collegiate wrestling or club wrestling in school or outside of school, but most of the time this is pertaining to school related activities, is the most available amount of bodies you will have to train pure wrestling with in your entire life. Because for me, I did wrestling for fun, and when I got into mixed martial arts training later, I realized how I wish I took more advantage of the time in the wrestling room. You know, a lot of times, like, you only go to wrestling practice if you actually wrestle. But even if you're someone so new that like you don't even want to join in like the beginning of the winter and wrestle within 2 months, dude, just like go do the practices, go learn the moves, go get time on the mat. Because it's like, even when you go to jiu-jitsu, nobody wrestles, nobody wants to wrestle. And it's like, you're never going to have a 2-hour block where you're practicing shooting and sprawling and ankle picking and, you know, whizzering and underhooking, overhooking and pummeling. You're never going to get that level of experience with pure wrestling ever again in your life. Maybe if you're a full-time mixed martial artist, you have wrestling practices, okay? But for most people that don't have as much time, even if you are an amateur fighter with a full-time job, I'm telling you, like, if you guys are young and you have a way to do high school or college wrestling, try to just do it to some extent, because I didn't know back then that even though I'd go on to lose a bunch of wrestling matches, that when I would start doing mixed martial arts training, by the time I was in like an older, more mature, strong body, the muscle memory was there. And it's like, hey, you know, I'm a striker, but I like literally know how to wrestle decently, right? Like it's not like this day one thing for me where like, you know, you take a champion kickboxer, you try to have him transition to MMA, and this guy doesn't even understand the concept of level changing and shooting. Like, that's fucking bad, you know, it's tough. But you know, that wraps it up. I don't want this to get too long. I want to maybe make a lot more of these, so hopefully I get good feedback. There's a lot of good feedback on the last one, but for now, that's all. If you liked the video, you know, drop a comment below. And especially if you made it to the end of this video, let me know. Just write a little something. I made it to the end of the video. I liked it. I hated it. I like this point. I disagree with this point. You know, let's get some talking in the comments, okay? So comment, share, subscribe. Stay tuned for more.